Get started.
Welcome, everybody. This is our second week of these free webinars we're doing on Wednesdays. We're doing these leading up to our certification training, which starts October 26th, right? Yep. And so we love to share this information. Each week we're doing this, we're doing something that we cover in our certification. We like to get nerdy. So I'm Brian, as Alicia. We're Breathe and Believe. We do workshops, events, trainings, classes, online courses. You can find our website at breatheandbelieve.com. And like I was just saying, we have a certification training coming up. That's kind of what this is for, to kind of give you an idea of what we do in our training. I'm a Kundalini instructor, Wim Hof method instructor. We're both Oxygen Advantage instructors. Alicia is a yoga instructor too, and she's also a school psychologist. So Alicia is going to be covering this tonight.
Get a nerd out.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen.
So we're going to do 30 minutes of presentation discussion, and then about 15 minutes of breath work. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And we're also going to put a link to our, is there a chat?
Yep, it's on the bottom there.
We're also going to put a link to our certification training on there.
Okay, so we're all about the healing transformational powers of the vagus nerve. And what Brian and I, what we love to do is bridge science with spirit. And it's getting easier to do as more research comes out and as like our understanding of energy and everything just becomes more available. Then we're able to like, okay, let's pull this together. And instead of having two separate camps, let's bring it together. And so this is like our favorite because the vagus nerve like truly allows us to see that overlap between the two. So I like this quote. The greatest thing then in all education is to make our nervous system our ally as opposed to our enemy. And that's by William James. He's like the founder of psychology. And, you know, that's something that we're seeing more and more. We're recognizing that we have to have regulated nervous systems. If we don't have regulated nervous systems, we're seeing all of the different diseases and issues that we can have in our life. And so we want to take it a little bit further. So like, okay, yes, let's understand how our nervous system impacts our life. And let's come up with tools to minimize those problems, but let's take it further and let's use our nervous system to really amplify this life experience, to hit that like self-actualization that we all like hope to have in our life, to maximize this life experience. We're not here just simply to survive. And that's what the nervous system is designed to do. We're here to thrive. And so we have to be able to hack into the nervous system, understand what's going on first, and then have that awareness. With that awareness, do something about it so that we can really thrive in this life. And so just a quick overview of the nervous system. It guides almost everything that we do, we think or say. It controls complicated process. So it's like that voluntary stuff, like making my fingers move, running, talking, all of that, but also the things that we don't talk or don't think about. Like, thankfully, our nervous system has evolved to a way that we do not have to stop and think about having to run or having to breathe or having to like beat our heart. Because if we did that, like that's all we would do. And then we would forget and die. So there's that autonomic part, that automatic part that allows those processes to take place without having to think about it. And that autonomic nervous system, it helps like gauge what's going on in the world around us so that we can respond to the challenges of daily life. And it's really about survival. It wants us to make sure that like scanning the environment, are we safe? And if we are safe, then it's trying to maximize like our everything that's working, like our rest and digest. So like making sure that everything, our our organs are working properly so that we're able to digest our food, get the nutrients that we need, filter things out that we don't need, and making sure that we're just living our physical body is as optimal as possible. And we don't have to think about that. It's happening all the time. So then there's the two branches. There's a sympathetic, so that's our fight or flight, or the parasympathetic, and that's our rest and digest system. And that makes up our autonomic nervous system. So we're going to first focus on the sympathetic nervous system, and that's happening through the spinal sympathetic chain. It is our fight or flight system. And so when that happens, something comes in, your sensory system, something picks up on like, okay, there's something to be afraid of here. And then all the energy goes to what it needs in order to make sure that you're going to be able to survive, whether that's getting you to run away from it or to fight. So your heart rate will increase, your breathing changes, and like the energy might go to your muscles in your hands, your arms, and your legs. And what it's also doing is diverting attention and energy away from your internal organs. You know, some of your, like your stomach, who cares about digesting your last meal when you don't know if you're going to have another meal coming up? So it's more about the immediacy of what's going on and not so much about like making sure that things are working optimally long term. The issue is our systems haven't evolved fast enough to handle this lifestyle. So if you're going for a hike and you think that there's like bears around you, you're going to be, super aware. And let's say like you're enjoying this hike and you hear rustling in the trees or something, that's the fight or flight. It's going to come online and like scan the environment. Nothing's there. Fine. You can keep walking. You're in nature. You can come back to a calm state. But now think about our daily lives and think about like deadlines or being late for work or being like getting an unexpected bill. There's so many things that happen in our daily life that send messages of fear. Like, I don't know what this is, or, even like if we watch the news, there's all these different ways that we can die, and it makes it feel like it could happen to anyone at any time. And so we're in this chronic state of stress. We're in that fight or flight far too often, and we're often like sedentary. So we're not like, like if you're hiking, you're able to kind of work that energy out, but we often are sitting at our desks when all these bombardments of the sympathetic are happening. And so we can't just relax and allow our body to adjust after that. And so what we know is an imbalanced nervous system. When we have our system in that fight or flight, more often than not, that it's going to create imbalances in our system. And that's like what we're seeing from a health perspective is like 60 to 90% of all doctor visits are stress related. So many different diseases are being traced to stress. It's not necessarily genetic in nature. And this is having such a huge impact. And so this is why it's so important to be able to become aware of how our nervous system, how important it is. And if you're in a state of like physical pain, like rheumatoid arthritis, irritable bowel syndrome, those type of things, and you're having those things to deal with, like you're not able to find, the higher states. You're in a survival mode. So you can't think about like purpose in life or going after your dreams. We're kind of stuck in that rut of survival. So then we also have that parasympathetic nervous system, and that the vagus nerve is responsible for. That's our rest and digest system. And so that's what we kind of like thought, that it would just be between those two systems, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. But then Stephen Porges comes along and he's like, well, wait, there's more to the story. There's two branches in the vagus nerve, and one is the dorsal. It's a freeze response. So when we say fight, flight, or freeze, we sometimes think like, oh, that's a sympathetic thing, but actually that's going to trigger, when you get to the freeze response, that's a parasympathetic reaction. It's just an extreme one. And then we also have the ventral, which they call the social engagement. That's in charge of the social engagement, allowing us to feel more centered and present. So the vagus nerve, that's responsible for that parasympathetic. It's the 10th cranial nerve, and they call it the wandering nerve. It really wanders throughout our whole body. being able to tap in and touch into so many different organs. It's getting that feedback, and it's bidirectional. So it's, yes, it's coming from our mind to our body, but 80% of the nerves are going from our body up to our mind. So that's going to be important as we move forward, but also just understanding like our nervous system is our subconscious mind. It's been paying attention our whole life to things like that we need to watch out for our survival. So sometimes we can be triggered by something into a sympathetic or even maybe like a freeze response, and we have no idea what it is. And you can go through it and you're like, I just don't know. But maybe there was something in your past. It could be like a smell, a noise, something that you see, and your nervous system, it's keeping track, right? And so then it's triggering, like, we have to be afraid of this because there was that one time when we experienced something similar and it did not go well. So we might not have a conscious memory of that, but our nervous system is paying attention to it. And so it's just hyper vigilant and it's great because that's in charge of our survival, right? That's what it's worried about. But it can also become an issue because it can make us super hyper vigilant. And people with like PTSD, that might be something that they experience. So then we talk about the two branches. So that dorsal is the oldest part of our nervous system. So it's even older than the sympathetic nervous system. And it takes us from connection. So it's like when you get to a point where your nervous system is so overwhelmed, it's just like it's shut down. And so it's like complete disassociation. It's like playing possum. And then there's some different chemicals that can be released that allow like pain. So you're not going to feel pain because it's thinking like, okay, death is certain and we want to help this person or this body or animal not have to feel as much pain. So it's a very adaptive function of our nervous system. So that's the oldest. And then the sympathetic came along and then like, well, maybe we don't have to, maybe we have other options, right? So how many hundreds of millions later, we have the sympathetic nervous system that allows us to fight or to run. And then we get the ventral, and that's the newest part of the nervous system. And that's more giving us like conscious power back and putting us back into a state of calm. So we're not just reacting to everything. We actually, it's part of the system that allows us to thrive in this lifetime. And so the ventral, when we talk about social engagement, what does that actually mean? It's talking about like feeling that connection to oneself, to others. You actually feel safe. You're feeling secure. You're in the present moment. It's that power of now that we often talk about. You're grounded. You can be curious and open-minded to things, compassion. And we often talk about the meditative mind. So just being like in the world, like being neutral, being able to respond from a place of power and like being very conscious, basically. And so when we can be in that ventral vagal, the social engagement, then that's allowing us to make those decisions to really be fully present in life. So let's just like walk through this. Like, why do we have it like this? So let's say like, we all have evolved from animals. So you're a gazelle and there's a lion, and the lion, and I did not make a video of a lion actually going after a gazelle because that would disturb me. I don't like watching that stuff. So this is just a peaceful one where it looks like they're all friends. So the lion goes after the gazelle and it grabs the gazelle. Right. And so the gazelle has the adaptive response to go into the dorsal. So it goes into a freeze response. And that's important because if it's going into a freeze response, then the lion might be more apt to just let it go. Whereas if it's still in fight or flight, or it's like fighting to get away, the lion's natural tendency is to bite down harder, right? Because it's prey and that's its habitual response. So then the lion, okay, it thinks it's dead, lets it down, maybe goes off, does something else. The gazelle can then like get up and it'll shake off, like shake the energy out of it, and then maybe go find its herd and go back to grazing. And so it kind of went through all of those different stages: the dorsal, sympathetic, dorsal, the freeze response, back to like a little sympathetic first, and then back to like the ventral, where it's able to just go back to feeding itself. And what's interesting is it's also not holding on to that trauma. Animals don't necessarily hold on to the trauma the same way that humans do. They're able to like move on, and they might like imprint some certain things, but they're not having the emotional response that we tend to have as humans. So when we hear a lot about vagal tone, and that's basically our ability to move through these different nervous systems in a way that's like adaptive for us. So it's like, okay, well, if you need to get adrenaline and get going and boost yourself because you might have like a fight or flight situation, then that's a gas pedal. Well, then maybe we don't need it so much. So you can pump the brake a little bit. And so we want to be able to move through depending on what's going on in life. So it's not about like just staying on cruise control. It's about like being able to adjust to the roads of life. And the more that we do that, then that's a higher vagal tone. And that can be measured by heart rate variability. So a person's heart rate, like it changes through the day, but if it doesn't have a lot of variability in its heart rate, then it's probably stuck somewhere, right? It's a lower vagal tone. Whereas if your heart rate is like able to go up and then come down and kind of move through, then it's more fluid. It's able to respond to whatever it is that's coming at it and then come back into balance. So a vagal tone can be affected by past emotional traumas. People who have a trauma history tend to have a lower vagal tone. Current and chronic stress, there could be infections, and it's very much tied to gut health because again, like the vagus nerve, it's attached to all of our organs. And if you have like bad gut lining, candida, those sorts of things, then it's sending messages to the vagus nerve that things aren't okay, right? And so that can damage the vagal tone as well. And so there's a lot of, if you look into like heart rate variability, and a lower heart rate variability, meaning a lower vagal tone, is associated with a lot of different mental illnesses and physical illnesses. And basically what that's telling us is we're not able to regulate our nervous system. It's dysregulated in some way, shape, or form. And so like that's where, you know, like, okay, that's why stress is the number one problem that we have for health, right? And so it's associated with our vagus nerve. Our ability to have our vagus nerve, our vagal tone, be able to shift through these different states, to be able to respond and to move and to flow. So we want to be able to do that. And when we can do that, when we can really shift through, then it's not just about like not being sick. It's about like, that's the richness of this lifetime. So we focus a lot at Breathe and Believe on the flow state, because it's this magical experience where like you're truly alive and engaged in this life. It is the activation of the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. It's in flow, it's in balance. So when you think of like athletes or writers or dancers or people like working in restaurants or something, like there's activation of the sympathetic. You're moving, you're in that state, but it's in such a state that you feel in control. You feel, we call it the meditative mind in action, because you're applying that. And so it's like, I mean, it's just such a beautiful experience. What do you want to add about the flow? Because you like the
yeah, it's all about the flow for sure. I do want to add one thing, vagal tone, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Do you want to go back?
So yeah, vagal tone, it's like you get in a car wreck, and how long does it take for you to sort of find, okay, is everyone okay? Mm-hmm. Right? So it's moving from stress to rest. And that's really important when I talk about some of the Wim Hof stuff. Mm-hmm. So because the stress is actually something that's common in our lives, can we move to rest? And that's vagal tone. Mm-hmm. Because for a lot of people, when we are in all these factors right here, past trauma, current stress, and all that, we can't get out of that stress, right? Mm-hmm. And so then our vagal tone is weak. So
well, and like if you have more of like the dorsal response and you get into that point of like withdrawal, then it's like you might get to a point where you don't want to put yourself in stress. Like you're in your comfort mm-hmm. zone, and there's not a lot of motivation to get out of there. And then that's going to be like a weak vagal tone, and you're not going to be able to like transcend and really live the fullness of life, which is what like the Wim Hof and what like we'll talk about next, why that's so important. So understanding too that like sometimes being in a hyper stress state looks like depression and withdrawal and not putting yourself out there. And so that's something that when you're doing cold therapy, like you're mastering over that. And we don't want like to send the message that one system is wrong and you don't want to be in any of them. That's the richness of life. The duality and the complexity and the depth is like it's all there for us to experience, to enjoy, to learn, to have opportunities.
Yes, it's the yin and the yang. And that's where we get the flow. As we go into that challenging situation, we find balance in it. We find that flow state. And that's sort of the optimal state of happiness.
And that's Brian surfing, everyone.
Oh, no, we don't have to see it.
Did you know I put that in there?
Not me playing basketball or anything else. So this is the bridge here, right?
Yeah. Yep. And that's it. Like, so first, like when we talk about spirituality, we want to make sure, like, I don't know, sometimes it's like, it's something people we're uncomfortable with. And we want to talk about it because it's so important. It adds to the breadth, depth of life. And I understand sometimes it's like, okay, we think of it like a religion. And if you're associated with a certain religion, then sometimes like that's very intimate to you. If you've had a really good experience with your religion, you don't want to learn something else necessarily, or you don't want to be swayed to another religion because you already have one. Or maybe you've had a bad experience with religion. And so there's a pushback to anything that might be associated with it. We're not talking about that. We're talking about like the ability to live beyond the challenges of the human condition. We're talking about having purpose and meaning. We're talking about the fact that each one of us, were born with divine gifts, opportunities of this lifetime, and we're not tapping into that. We're living in survival mode because of our autonomic nervous system has been like completely out of whack and dysregulated. So it's such an unfortunate thing because we're not in our spirit, like our soul is not flowing through us. And then we end up like on our deathbeds, just so full of regret, because then you realize like, I didn't live, I just survived. And that's like, no, we need to move beyond that and move through it. And these are ways that we can do that.
Like that post I made today of Steve Jobs.
I didn't read it yet.
Oh, you gotta read it. Yeah, he never had joy in his life.
Right.
He was focused on the wealth.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's like, that's the point. Because look at what he all accomplished, and we think like that, man, he nailed life.
Yeah,
And the person who like is doing, who knows, like flipping burgers at McDonald's might have more purpose and meaning because they're connected and they're finding joy in the small things in life. It doesn't matter what you're doing. But if we don't stop and talk about this stuff and we don't connect with that, our world is just going to continue to get more and more dysfunctional. We have to be able to have these conversations and bring us back to like why we're really here.
Yep. That's why we're here. So let's look at that connection. The vagus nerve, our chakras, and our energy channels. How do they all connect? So the vagus nerve and the endocrine system are connected by the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus, that's huge when we start talking about cold therapy, because there's two thermoregulators on the body. One's your skin, the other's the hypothalamus. So for me, I've been doing yoga and meditation and daily practice for over 22 years. When I found cold therapy, it was a game changer for me. And that was only about 4 or 5 years ago. It was a full-on next level. I know people like, oh, I hate the cold. I can't stand it. I
did too.
Yeah. But literally, it's like there's something seriously going on here. And that hypothalamus is being stimulated, and it's activating the vagus nerve and the endocrine system. I feel it right now just talking about it, literally. And the fact that I did some cold therapy today. So the endocrine system is our hormonal system. And it's associated with each chakra. So think of like the pituitary gland, the pineal gland, the heart, just all our different chakra energy centers are all sort of associated with some organ in our body in that endocrine system. There are two main energy channels in the Kundalini system or the energy system. That's the Ida channel and the Pingala channel. They're masculine and feminine, and one's associated. Masculine is more sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, and feminine is more parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest. When we inhale our breath, it stimulates our sympathetic nervous system. That's a masculine energy. getting ready to fight, inhale, that's sympathetic. When we exhale, that's a parasympathetic. It's that fundamental. Literally, when we breathe, we're literally doing the duality between masculine and feminine energy, sympathetic and parasympathetic, and that plays into all of this, right? The energy runs up from the base of the spine. You know that when you feel adrenaline, you get excited. You're like, whoop, there it is. Your hair stands up on all in. It's coming up, and the Kundalini energy moves up the chakras. Flow activates the flow state. Okay, that's really important. Nihai Csikszentmihalyi, who was
You do so good.
who was a psychologist who just passed away a few months ago. He did the largest happiness study on the planet, and he found that people in flow state, and he would go find this like people like auto workers in Detroit, right? Not meditators, not rich people, none of that. Just anyone he could find that had a flowing life. They had a rich life, they had gardens, they were in the flow at work, they loved what they did. That was the key to happiness. The flow state is also, if you think of Michael Jordan, or like surfing, or like in the zone, any of that, running, that's all flow state. And the flow state activates the same brain waves and neurochemicals as a mystical experience. Our favorite example is the unity consciousness or oneness. That experience of oneness literally is a term called transient hypofrontality. And that's like the greatest, nerdiest term in the world, because it's literally our prefrontal cortex, the part that associates with time and space and division and separation, goes offline. So now we're connected to everything, and we're in a state of oneness and unity. How awesome is that? And we can measure that. So this really is the bridge that we're talking about between science and spirit. So when everything's working, bliss, radiance. I like the term fountainhead. We've all experienced this somehow. As a Kundalini teacher, I try to make it as simple as possible. Like, what is it? Think of dancing with your friends, or listening to certain music, or being in nature, and you feel this energy moving through your body, and you feel radiance and joy and bliss. That's Kundalini. It's the same. The vagus nerve is active. All your systems active. You have that energy moving through your body. It comes, recycles back through. I mean, it's just, this is the ultimate, like, the peak state experience of a mystic is this, but we experience this out on a wave, or if everything's flowing in our life, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We can experience this in anything we do. And that's what we teach. We don't teach this as just like, oh, coming to your mat and finding this radiance and this joy and this inner peace, but no, bring it into your world. The mat allows us to train for it and build it. That's what we love. We can reverse engineer this process. We can recreate the flow state through breath work and cold and meditation. And then that's going to help us achieve the flow state in life.
And like with this picture, like you look at it and it's like, okay, when everything's in flow, look at the energy around. And so we can now measure like the energy that's coming off of our body. And so like, okay, like if we want to go back to science, this is like the visual representation of your vagus nerve, your vagal tone being high, and basically the energy in your systems moving and running optimally. That doesn't necessarily mean it's in like one position, it's in ventral all the time. It's able to flow. And when you can do that, then like your immune system boosts, your cognitive ability will improve. There's so many different like physical things that happen. You are healthier, you're happier. The energy is moving where it needs to in your organs, in your muscles, in your tissue, to bring you that vibrancy. So that's why we'll talk about like people who might have, a lot of flow state or something. They're the ones that will walk into the room and it's just like, wow, they just radiate it, And so this is like the image of that. So that's the spiritual, but it's also the physical. It's just everything completely in alignment and flowing. I love that. I could look at that all day.
Awesome. Yes.
So like Brian said, like breath work is a way that we can hack into the system and to help tone our vagus nerve, help us get into a flow state as well. So we say, okay, LSD, we don't mean like LSD, but it's our acronym for light, slow, and deep. And we go into all of this so much more in detail in our certification course. We can just touch on it now. But light, we don't want to take in large volumes of air. There's a lot of really important things that go with that. But you just know, like, just for this overview, we don't want to take a lot of air in.
Yeah, like with yoga, people say, "Oh, take a deep breath," and it's not. That's not really what we want to do. That's a little instantaneous relief, but that's actually harming our sort of. That's like a CO2 flush that makes us feel good. When we want to do it light, slow, and deep, really, even in a yoga class, we want it as much as we can, light, slow, and when we say deep,
we mean diaphragm.
Yeah. Deep from the diaphragm. Yep.
So when like, okay, if I'm at school, I'm at work, kids like maybe having a panic attack or getting anxious, the go-to thing is like, take a deep breath, right? And then what do? Think about, right? Well, you're breathing in through your mouth. That's going to stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. You're going to breathe in through your chest. That's sympathetic, because remember, these nerves go from here up to your brain. So if even you can have like all the therapy in the world, but if you get into the pattern of breathing incorrectly, your vagus nerve, you're still sending messages to your body, your brain, that you're not safe, because it's taking that feedback. If you're breathing in through your diaphragm, then that's sending a message to your system, like, we're okay. We can be in balance. It's not in fight and flight all the time. So that's the importance of understanding, like, okay, that's the part of the autonomic nervous system that we can hack into, and that's in communication with all of the systems. So the more that we learn to breathe properly, the healthier we will be. Like the slow 5 to 6 breaths per minute average is 12 to 15 breaths per minute, and that's not healthy. It's average, but because that's what most of us are doing.
I think it's higher than that.
I think
15 to 20.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Inhale, like Brian said, that activates the sympathetic. Exhale activates the parasympathetic. And then we also do power breathing. So Brian was just saying, like, the deep breath thing. Well, when we're doing it in a practice, right? Like this, there's so much intention with it. So that's like the flow state, because you're, like in this picture, laying down and you're activating your sympathetic nervous system by breathing in a certain way. And you're also using your diaphragm, and you're in a relaxed state where it's allowing full acceptance. So then that allows you to have that balance of sympathetic and parasympathetic, to open up the channels in your body and to allow energy to flow. And so what we often see is, like, people might have like experiences come to the surface that, like, where is that coming from? But again, like, the body's keeping track. It's like the body keeps the score. It's a subconscious mind. So it might then dig up something that, like, you might have to face, and it's there. But now you're in this parasympathetic, this state of sympathetic with parasympathetic, but you feel safe. And so then you're able to just like allow it, separate yourself from it. You're not it, and allows you to heal in a very profound way. And then like ohms, mantra, humming, laughing, all of those things also that are associated often when we're done with breath work, or ujjayi breathing, that also helps tones the vagus.
I want to add one thing to the power breathing, which is basically Wim Hof. Like, think of a powwow, and they bring the drums out and they just start pounding the drums. I don't know if you guys have been to a powwow, but I have. And it's like, holy crap, what's going on here? That's a sympathetic nervous system activator, right? And so that's what we're doing when we're breathing really heavy in the Wim Hof or the shamanic style breathing, or all these new breath works that are coming out. We're activating the sympathetic to stir it up. We're stirring the stuff, right, to move through it. So cold therapy, it's really about mindset. This is one thing I think is a lot missing. We see the word plunge sometimes, and you think, oh, you're just going to jump in and you're just going to force yourself through it, and you're going to get out and you're getting all of these benefits. We definitely do not treat it that way whatsoever. We treat it as a mindset training. We want to go in there calm. It's cold therapy. We want to find the mindset in there to find calm in the chaos, right? Because you're going to get in there. We have a full way of teaching cold therapy where it's like that initial shock you use to your advantage to find your inner peace and your inner calm. And that's, you're building resilience. You're using that sympathetic to parasympathetic in a very profound way. It's finding comfort in the discomfort. It stimulates the hypothalamus, which is connected to the endocrine system and what we talked about before. So cold therapy to me is like literally golden. I don't know of anything that could replace. I mean, breath work, absolutely, mindset and all that other stuff, but cold therapy is just, it's incredible. It really is. But having the right mindset in there. If we're going in there with resistance and we're coming out with the resistance, we're saying, I just hate it, but I'm doing it anyways because I think it's good for me. We're losing.
A huge opportunity.
Yeah.
And so when I learned a lot about cold therapy, wanted to do it, but it was forcing myself through something because I hate the cold and I have Raynaud's and it's painful. But then I was watching Brian do it and I'm like, he's not forcing himself through this. He is finding calm and still in it. And then, like that was a whole mindset shift for me that then allowed me to be like, you know what, there's something to this when you aren't forcing. I didn't want to force myself through it. So yeah,
that's not about
if I can do it, anybody can do it.
And you are addicted to it.
I am.
So the ancient yogis have a saying that angels are jealous of the human experience. What does that mean? They're jealous of our ability to feel, of our ability to have these feelings and these emotions. And we have to have the challenges of the human experience to experience those gains and those feelings and those bliss. That's one of my favorite sayings in the whole world.
And the more that we feel, the more that we activate the vagus nerve, the more that we do these practices, the more amplified your sensations get. So it's just the richness of life, your senses, everything just gets more and more profound.
So this
is alchemy.
Yeah, it's all together.
Quick. Yep.
Bringing it all together. It's all about alchemy. You'll hear Wim Hof say alchemy. We call our training spiritual alchemy because it's what it's about. Finding comfort in the discomfort, reverse engineering the human disease. That's a huge part of this. The more you experience wholeness, the more you get to these peak states, the more you're reverse engineering all the trauma and all the pain and all the illusion from the past, the illusion of this living in duality and division. That's a huge part of our training is the human disease. What is it? It's in every one of us. We all have it. And until we start achieving wholeness and finding this sort of balance between the energies and living in those flow states, we're kind of conditioning ourselves towards a dysfunctional nature, that dysfunction, right? And that's why we have so much disease, physical, mental, emotional, all of it.
That is, the human disease is a result of not regulating our nervous system.
Yep, that's it. And so alchemy is all about taking that power back. So our training, again, it's coming up. We're doing these to promote our training. We'll be straight up honest with you. It's as much a transformational experience as it is a breathwork certification. We want to give you the confidence, have you the experience of transformation and give you the confidence to go out and teach it in the world. We cover the world of breathwork from A to Z, every kind. We have the Buteyko, the Wim Hof, shamanic, Kundalini, all the different pranayama practices.
And it's we cover from just strictly physical, like physical health, all the way to like the spiritual. Yeah. And it's much needed in this world.
So now we're going to do our vagal toning breath work, which is sort of our signature breath work. This is what we train people in, also in a shamanic style breath work as well. But we're going to do our vagal toning breath work. So it's always a breath work sequence. You get more benefit out of a sequence of breaths rather than just one. We're actually going to do, not going to do the 7-8-4 at the end. We don't have time. We're just going to end with the Buteyko. So I'll explain these breaths real quick. So the 4-7-8, that's the 101 of breath work. It's inhale for 4, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. We do it all through the nose to stimulate more nitric oxide. The breath hold for 7 brings us into deeper brainwave states, and the exhale, longer exhale than inhale, activates the parasympathetic nervous system. 4-7-8 is golden. I think everyone should know it. Buteyko is sort of the opposite end of the spectrum of the Wim Hof, but they pair really, really well. It's we're raising our CO2 with Wim Hof. We're flushing our CO2. So the Buteyko is actually increasing our CO2 because it's building our body's resilience to CO2 and it's optimizing our blood oxygen distribution. So it's very, very good for athletes, performance, or anything physical. It gives us energy. It can get rid of headaches in 5 breaths. Buteyko is incredible. And then Wim Hof. So Wim Hof is the power breathing.
Mhm.
It's going to activate the sympathetic nervous system. So when we get to that heavy breathing, notice yourself that intensity. And then it's going to bring us into a calm because we're hacking our system. By flushing CO2, we can hold our breath longer.
Mhm.
Longer breath holds bring us into deeper brainwave states. That's why we have these really deep, powerful experiences with breath work. All right.
I'm gonna stop.
So everyone, come to a comfortable seat if you're not already. Please remove any distractions, any noise or anything as best you can. Sit with your spine straight. Hands can just be on your thighs, or you can do this laying down too. That's perfectly fine. And then close your eyes and start to focus on your breath. So inhaling in through the nose. If you feel any stress in the body, exhale out the mouth. And notice that that will reduce the stress more because it's flushing more CO2. So inhale through the nose. Relax the body on the exhale. And we want the ujjayi breath. It's a slight restriction at the back of the throat, like we can make a sound with our breath. The sound of an ocean wave or the Darth Vader breath. And we'll do one more to bring us into the power of now and be ready. Focusing solely on the breath. Relaxing everything. Now we're going to inhale for a count of 4. Inhale. And hold the breath. Slowly release the breath for a count of 8. Inhale for 4. Hold. Slowly release for 8. Inhale for 4. Hold the breath. Slowly release for 8. Inhale for 4. Hold. Slowly release for 8. Now, gentle breathing through the nose only, about half the breath in, half the breath out. This is that light, slow, deep breath. Half the breath in, half the breath out, but visualizing and moving all the way from the lowest part of the belly through the body, diaphragm moving with your breath, very gently. Gentle inhale, gentle exhale. Now hold the breath on the exhale. And we want to find comfort in the need for air. Gentle inhale, gentle exhale, hold. Find comfort in the need for air. Gentle inhale, gentle exhale, hold the breath. Gentle inhale, gentle exhale, hold. Gentle inhale, gentle exhale, hold the breath. Now back to regular breathing. Notice any feeling you have in your body, the calming, the relaxing, but also the readiness. the balance. Now we'll come into the power breathing, or one round of Wim Hof. So it's just deep breathing as much as you can. You really want to breathe through your belly, through your body. And we're going to do it through the mouth because we want to give ourselves the full effect. So we are going to use our mouth to really stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. So it's full breaths. Inhale. Breathing as deep as you can. Three, two, one. Now let's do 10 more really fast. Deep, deep inhale. Release the breath out about 3/4 of the way, not all the way out. Relax everything. Hold the breath on the exhale. Feel deep into the body. Feel yourself going deeper into the experience. Deeper into the depth. Deeper. Now take a deep, deep breath in. And visualize that image we had before, the energy coming out the crown of the head and showering across your whole body. Take another sip of breath in. Visualize that energy around your whole body and then release. Come back to very gentle breathing through the nose. Gentle inhale. Gentle exhale. Hold. And notice how much easier it is to hold the breath now. Gentle inhale. Gentle exhale. Hold. Gentle inhale. Gentle exhale. Hold. Gentle inhale. Gentle exhale. Hold. We're optimizing your body's ability to distribute oxygen to the cells. Gentle inhale. Exhale. Hold. And back to regular but very light breathing. And just feel in the body. Notice how good it feels. Any pain you might have had, probably gone. Any tension, probably gone. And when you're ready, you can slowly come back and open your eyes. Oh boy. If you're really, really deep and you want to stay there, you can take yourself off the call.
Mhm.
All right.
Well, everybody have a wonderful night and thank you for joining us.
Yep. Thank you.